Hello,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm good. Is our reception working today?
Crystal clear, it's great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. Good stuff. Um, Long time no chat. How have you
Yes.
been?
Decent. Shit's changing, moving different states. We're literally doing this podcast from a motel room as I'm halfway between Victoria and New South Wales in the middle spot. So I am once again the mainland's problem.
Yep. K-pop fans, be afraid.
Yes, I will be in your area.
Yes, you in your area, being the revolution or something.
Exactly.
Um, let's get down to it and talk about some stuff.
Sweet. I
Um,
wonder how much of this shit's going to be outdated because of like how long it's been since we've done one of these.
yeah, look, some of it's kind of old, but that's all right.
That's right.
We'll catch up.
Just yeah, just like the villain in a horror movie franchise.
Mm.
Once you think we're dead, you just can't get rid of us, and we're back again.
That's right. Some people might have thought that the AustralianSana podcast were over, but no, they're
I
back.
live, bitch.
We did intend to do this every month, but
Yeah.
um, I think we're both just a little bit too busy to make that a realistic possibility.
Work, um, moving outside hobbies or whatnot. But yeah, my schedule will probably be a bit different once again once I settle in. But hopefully, I will be a bit more easily accessible.
Mm. All right, well, let's get down to it. Some interesting feedback is that some people would actually prefer us to maybe go more in depth on fewer topics,
Hmm.
which I think is just another way of saying the question quality is a bit shit. Can you make it better?
Well, that's a them problem.
It is, it is.
Like, send us the better questions.
Yes. So I've tried to vet this to reasonably good quality questions. I,
Yeah.
I kept a few shit ones as well for last, but generally speaking, we got some good stuff. So let's get into it.
Right.
Um, First one. Please take this opportunity to go on an hour-long ramble about all things BTS following their recent anthology album, sudden
Mm,
hiatus announcement, and their
mm,
musical future. Love
mm.
hearing your thoughts. And
Interesting.
there's a bit of tinfoil hat bonus here.
Mm,
Given the hiatus or solo project commencement seem to have been in the works since Map of the Soul 7, it
mm.
seems unusual that the hiatus announcement was so sudden, and a lot of the hype um, seemed to deliberately obfuscate what was obvious. Do you think this was out of genuine incompetence or sudden breaking point pushback from BTS to HYBE, or an orchestrated series of events to give certain people an opportunity to buy the dip before carrying on as normal?
Oh, yeah. Well, anytime we're getting into this kind of stuff, you got to get your tinfoil hat on because there's always so many layers to do with Hive and Big Hit and a company and whatnot. So, opening statement on my future hour length rambling point is once again, I am right as always. I am not shocked by this in the slightest. It is once again the same kind of shit that people who in the fandom were bullied maybe 2 or 3 years ago for asking for such things. And it has now become the norm in terms of solo projects, because if you ever asked for one of those a few years ago, you were a solo stan, gay fan, manty, and whatever other rubbish they want to throw at you. But now look what's happening. Gee, who could have seen that coming as like the only way to potentially, manage an actual group and wanting to stay together for a long-term period. Because shockingly enough, as much as we love to buy into this OT7 group or nothing dynamic that was rammed down everybody's throats, they are 7 individuals in that group, and not every single time are they all going to want to do the same thing or have the same creative direction.
Yeah,
So asking for a little bit of individuality for the members to be able to explore their own projects without it being hyper restricted through only being released on SoundCloud or whatever other rubbish that they used to call a mixtape, which for the record was never a fucking mixtape, because anybody who knows anything, even remotely anything about old school hip hop, which as a fucking white person, I really do not know in depth, but even I could tell you the basics of a mixtape is not just a couple of songs strung together and dropped on SoundCloud. It's, a proper actual project. And usually it's a diss track involved as well, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, so the mixtape shenanigans was always bullshit. They should have always been able to do individual projects, have individual brand endorsements. Like, again, you used to say, oh, it would be nice if, say, Taehyung could have a Gucci contract, because he was at one point the human Gucci, because he's a bit of a... He's grown as a person, but he did have that little phase where he was a bit Gucci obsessed. And I was like, honey, you're better than this. This is so basic. But he loved his Gucci for a while. Totally should have copped a Gucci brand endorsement out of it. But because OT7 or nothing, he couldn't get his ad. And I think, what's his name? One of the guys from EXO ended up getting a Gucci deal for a while. And it's like, what fucking harm does it do to get individual brand exposure? Point is always that the company feared any particularly popular members, realizing that potentially they had more influence than the seven as a group. Because, when you're in a group of seven, someone's going to be a bit more popular than someone else. So I have a certain feeling that a certain member who is the least popular member, if you look through their sales and any sort of individual data statistics that are available, which are difficult to access because, again, the company doesn't want you knowing who the least popular members are because it's bad for their self-esteem. Also might be a certain leader who therefore is a bit involved in making these decisions with the company as well, so it's in his interest to keep the group as a seven because he benefits much more from that situation. But yeah, like, what's his name? Jungkook's done some solo with Charlie Puth. Not a horrible song, but just not something that I'm going to deliberately, go out of my way to seek out. He's got a nice voice. Song's okay. If I hear it on the radio, it's not like an Ed Sheeran song that I rush to immediately turn off. But, yeah, it's one of those, oh yeah, pleasant background music songs. But, his fans are enjoying it. So, it's charting quite well. And I think it's now, charting better than the BTS with Snoop Dogg and the other guy song that they released last week. So that is pretty much the exact reason why they tried to prevent them from doing solo projects, because certain individual members might start out charting the group, and that's a threat to group cohesion because human nature, bit of jealousy involved maybe. But again, if you even suggest that as like, oh, you're tearing this group apart, you're tearing me apart. Oh, hi, Mark. A little The Room reference there for anybody who's cultured enough to pick up on that.
Yes, I got it. And if anyone else did or not, I don't really care. But if not, just go see The Room and you get it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Bring some plastic spoons.
So what do you think about their tinfoil hat theory? Do you think buying the dip is actually a realistic scenario here?
Oh, I think that their stock management has to play into it in some degree, whether it's to do with buying the dip or deliberately announcing it before the stock went down so certain people could profit off potentially selling it off before the hiatus announcement came. And then, because there was some shit in the Korean news about certain investors being pissed that the announcement came out of nowhere and then the stocks dropped. And I was just like, honey...
They're upset they couldn't play the market.
Exactly. Like, if you couldn't see this coming from a mile away, then honestly, it's your own fault for buying into the bullshit. I mean, if you believe Big Hit Entertainment about anything, you kind of deserve to be ripped off.
Do you think there's a bit of friction between certain members over the actual hiatus itself?
I wouldn't necessarily go as far as saying that, because I think you do have to have a certain amount of likability and respect between you to all go and get a matching tattoo.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't, contrary to popular belief, I don't secretly think they all hate each other, but I also just think that adults grow apart, and that's not always a bad thing. Like, it's okay if they want to go and be individuals for a while, and maybe that's a year, maybe that's 5 years, who knows? But, you see groups like Shinhwa and they come back together, and I have a feeling that this is a group that will eventually come back together in some capacity. But it's their decision. And I'm not, I'm not overly devastated or anything about it. I'm like, if they want to come back, I have a feeling, but by the time they come back, the more fickle part of the fan base that's, has to chart #1 on Billboard or your faves are flops. And I feel like they're going to, go find something else to obsess over because you kind of need something to hyperfixate on when you're that fucking insane. So by the time that they're kind of moved on to something else, it also will give BTS a bit more of the creative freedom that they originally had, which was what made them such a good group in the first place. So I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic,
Yep.
that when they do return, it will also be a
Better.
bit more, yeah, better product.
Yeah. Cool, cool.
And I would gladly wait 5 years for BTS to put out an album on the tier of Young Forever again than get another comeback in a year's time and it's full of the Chainsmokers collabs again. So I know what I want and I'm happy.
Yeah, yeah, sure. All right, let's switch topics.
Yeah,
Let's talk about New Jeans.
interesting.
How creepy do you think it really is?
Yeah, so obviously Min Hee Jun is the issue of the creep factor, and there's
Do you
definitely
think it's
red
just her?
flags. Well, her as like the figurehead.
Mm,
Obviously, a company and CEO and boardroom full of men are okaying everything that she's suggesting and hiring her to do the concept. So it's a bit like La Seraphim when they had that pre-debut sort of teaser that was very centric to the male gaze and gained criticism for that. And there was a picture that was circulating around of all the high executives, and it was just 30 something men. So
mm.
again, that will always,
Which,
always.
which teaser was the one that was? Yeah, because
It
there
was
was
one
one for
they
each
were doing.
member.
Yeah, it wasn't it was the group one when they were
Oh,
doing a
okay.
catwalk.
Oh, okay.
And it was a casting room. That was literally the concept. So again, like, if you want to talk dog whistling in K-pop, a literal casting room concept,
Mm,
that is not a dog whistle, that is a bullhorn. Yeah, so that's that with Le Seraphim. Same kind of deal with New Jeans. It's always, and it's the same thing with SM when members of Red Velvet were minors, and it's any company that has ever debuted a minor. So
mm.
it's not just New Jeans only; it's any company debuting minors. But if we're talking specifically about New Jeans, Min Hee Jin as their creative director, red fucking flag for the fact that she has publicly gone on record talking about how much influence she gets from Brooke Shields as a child. When, if you look up Brooke Shields as a child, was in Playboy at like 9 or 12 or some insane age
Holy shit.
and being called like sexy by the writer. Like she wasn't nude in the Playboy, but it was still a
Mm,
Playboy write-up of a child.
mm.
And the movies that she was in was like, I think she was 14 or something like that, and it was a very sexualized film of her luring an adult of some sort. Um, there's the Brooke Shields idolization and calling that a muse for the type of group that she's creating whilst working with minors. Concerning. There's a picture on her Instagram and it's of her home studio or her work studio, but it's her building and it's her place. And there's pictures art-wise up on the wall, and it's children or very, very young adults who look like children in very suggestive poses with like a girl with a flat chest who's got her dress open and
Mm.
baring her chest. And I was just like, holy shit, I do not ever want to see that. And she's putting that on her Instagram page publicly. So, like, if this is what you're doing in public, can you imagine the shit that's going on behind the scenes for any group and any executives?
Did you read the statement that she made about it? She made it quite recently. You might not have seen it yet.
Mm. About this specific one,
Yes,
or because
about
I know
this. I mean, that Min Hee Jin made about these specific things.
interesting. When was that released? Because again, I saw one thing in an interview that was a quote, but I don't know about a statement specifically about her studio or
Mm.
idolizing Brooke Shields.
All right. So I'll read you a little bit of it.
Yeah, go ahead.
And keep in mind the translation may not necessarily be accurate.
Yes.
I think the original source might be a certain website that I will not name, who are known
Mm-hmm.
for, not necessarily doing things accurately. But
Yeah.
Previously, many suspicions and accusations arose that Min Hee-jin was glamorizing pedophilia. The reason was that Min Hee-jin posted pictures of naked girls in the interior of her studio.
Okay.
According to Min Hee-jin posts on her personal Instagram in the past, in response, Min Hee-jin dismissed the accusations, saying that, quote, the photos were just a gift from someone I know, unquote.
Yeah, because I totally display gifts like that in my room.
Additionally, she pointed out those photos were from a few years ago. In addition, there was more controversy due to a New Jean member wearing a T-shirt that said "Pimp is yours," and many people also discussed whether the song "Cookie" also had inappropriate meaning behind the lyrics. Min Hee-jin argued the word started as a slang word in the 70s and 80s and is still used in the United States in the same way to mean to decorate gorgeously, and has a great cultural value. She also explained that "Cookie" is a song for fans and explained we made the album with the heart of carefully baking cookies.
Yeah, that is exactly like your article that you wrote about dog whistling, and that it's subtle enough that if you call out, you can deflect it, but anybody can really read between the lines and see what's going on. Like cookie being very close to the slang term coochie, which is obviously a women's region, or obviously don't want to go into too much detail, but trans women are women too. But you get the gist of what coochie and cookie is slang for. And it's talking about like, you want to eat my cookie, and I was just like, oh Jesus. So yeah, exactly. It's just like
it's pretty blatant. It's
very
as blatant as NCT's hot sauce.
Yeah, and it's blatant, and it's the kind of thing that you're able to deflect by, oh no, we didn't mean it that way, if anybody calls you out on it, which is exactly the situation that's happened. In terms of New Jeans themselves, like, I am a big fan of the song Hype Boy. Like, I'm fucking obsessed with that song. It's a great song. I'm enjoying it. I haven't gone into much depth of the members because, again, like, everyone in the group is a minor. I think one member is 18. So it's like, at my age, as a 30-year-old, I don't see anything wrong in enjoying pop culture content because, as you grow up, it's still okay to enjoy hobbies and have interests and enjoy music. But I don't want to be like running stan accounts calling 14-year-olds it girl and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I think Danielle's cool. She's like there's two Australians. I can't remember the girl's name, but there's another girl who's also Vietnamese. I think it's Hani. But I could be wrong. So
I got no idea.
Yeah. But there's two Australians, so naturally any K-pop group with an Australian, I'm going to be like, yes, Queen, Stan, Rosé, of course, being the pioneer, paved the way. But yeah, so like obviously I want the girls to do well. I also I posted on my Twitter, I'm private, but for anyone who follows me, you guys probably know the fact that I've talked about, like, I have vivid memories of my childhood. And I remember like being 9 and obsessed with that girl group who had a one-hit wonder song. Their name was Dream. And the song they had was He Loves You Not. And like, I loved that song as a kid. And I loved S Club 7. And I loved Britney Spears. All of these as a child. So like, I remember what it's like to be a child who idolizes idols. That's literally how they get the name of idol. So I understand that in some regards, this is content featuring children, but made for children, much like Disney Channel. And any industry itself is going to unfortunately have predators. It's this the reality of like power corrupts absolutely. So that's why I always advocate for better regulation, more openness in any sort of industry like that. Try and peel back the curtain as much as possible, because the more it's in the light, the harder it is to sort of cover those things up. Slightly related in topic is Jeanette McCurdy, who used to be in the TV show iCarly, who experienced a very traumatic childhood from being a child star, both from her pushy stage mother, which is why her current autobiography that's just been released is called I'm Glad My Mom Died. Banger title. And she goes into depth on the mistreatment and certain things that were inappropriate sexually, in terms of she was photographed in a bikini as a child by the company Nickelodeon that she was working for. So I think that when we talk about stuff like New Jeans, like K-pop, any industry involving children where children are at risk of being mistreated, I think we should also bring into the conversation children that were mistreated who've come through the other side and tell their stories of it, because it's not very often that you really do get these sorts of tell-alls. So I want to put a focus on Jeanette McCurdy and her experience, and I hope a lot of people go look for her book and support someone coming out the other side of it. And, hopefully that's really where any sort of change is going to come from. So, like, I'm fingers crossed that her alleged abuser finally sees the light of day for it's like the worst open secret who Dan Schneider is and the things he did on sets in Nickelodeon. So again, as much accountability as possible.
Here's a related question
Mm-hmm.
that was asked actually before the whole New Jeans thing broke out.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know much about Starship's former boy group, Boyfriend? Do you know what their target market was? I seem to recall hearing that it may have been Nooners, i.e. older
Mm-hmm.
women. The
Mm-hmm.
matinee of Boyfriend was 15 when they debuted. Another three members were 16.
Mm-hmm.
Still on the topic of Starship, their new girl
Mm-hmm.
group, IVE or
Ivy.
IVE, I don't know. How do you say it? Um,
Ivy, I think.
Ivy, I
I
think.
say it is Ivy.
We'll still call it Ivy because that sounds nice. And then your girl group, Ivy's matinee was 14 when they
Mm-hmm.
debuted. Ivy's most popular member, Won Young, was
Mm-hmm.
14 when she debuted in iZone. Since
Technically 13 when she went on Produce 101, so that's even scarier.
Since iZone was a product of Mnet Produce Survival Show, whose producer
Mm-hmm.
once said was designed to be healthy porn for uncle fans, we can probably safely assume that Ivy is aiming for the same audience as Produce.
Mm-hmm.
My overall question, do you think that Starship are, quote, dirty old men, unquote,
Mm-hmm.
for objectifying young teenagers of either gender? Else, do you think they're just catering to specific markets with the groups, and Starship's leadership themselves aren't actually perverts? Starship haven't gone all in on the Lolita / Shota,
Mm-hmm.
or considering they had Sistar and
Mm-hmm.
Monster X, who had
Well,
different
that's really
concepts.
just them diversifying their market, if anything, trying to expand to the different audiences.
Mm,
But yeah, so it's very much the same sort of deal in terms of what I said before with Big Hit and how the Seraphim had that casting call video and how I basically just said before it's the same thing as SM, it's the same thing as any group that's debuting minors, so it very much just falls very neatly into that category. I do remember Boyfriend because they came out at a time when I wasn't, hag by K-pop standards. I think I was like maybe 18 when they came out,
mm.
and I remember being 18 and seeing a group of like 15 and 16-year-olds. I'm like, no, I don't like it when the boys are younger.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a weird thing, I guess, to like it's not when boys are younger because for example NCT Dream have a few songs that I like I still think My First and Last is NCT's best song period of any I think it's a banger. So yeah, if the song's good, the song's good, but again it's just weird standing
Yeah.
younger people, especially when it's very much Nuna bait, like for example Shiny when they sang Replay and the song's Nuna no yeah but and like you got what Taemin was what 14 I think as well when he debuted, so it's just like I don't need a teenage boy singing to me telling me how pretty I am. That's a bit weird, like uncomfy.
Mm.
Uncomfy. And that's a bit of a weird disconnect in terms of boy groups, girl groups, because as a female listener to a boy group song, if they're having lyrics that are almost sung directly at me, that's what it's marketed to be, it's a bit like, mm. Whereas I guess from a girl group song, when the girls are younger than I am, I'm not hearing opera being sung at me, thank God. But it also, reminds me of feelings of when I was a teenage girl, back when I was that age, and like it kind of takes you back to your youth and like, oh, I remember being a teenager, a bit of a dreamy sort of nostalgia. So when I listen to girl groups, I get more nostalgia. When I listen to boy groups who are in that concept, it's a bit like, I don't want to hear this. This is a bit uncomfortable because I know I'm the target audience, but as the target audience, I know they want me to be attracted to these children, and I am very much not.
Yeah. Um, my answer to this question, I'll chime in on this one because I actually have an opinion on it, is that I think everyone should, who hasn't, should go and watch Nine Muses of Star Empire, the Nine Muses documentary. And they should watch the scene where the executives are talking about marketing the girls and they're talking about honey thighs and stuff like that. Because, I mean, they're not like sitting there going, oh, and jacking off about it or whatever. They're not like being dirty old men about it. They're being basically they're looking at purely from a marketing perspective. Um, Rather than being the dirty old men, I think they're just realizing that there are dirty old men, and they're thinking, well, this is what's going to get the dirty old men interested. So um, I think a lot of this whole healthy porn biz, or various different things, I think it's just different types of marketing, and it's just trying to capture multiple audiences. And I think that um, that's just what it is, and they don't really, you know, they're not, I don't think they're getting high off their own supply, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm.
I think they, but just because you're not getting high off your own supply doesn't mean you're not a drug dealer.
Mm.
you know,
Yeah, that makes sense.
and who might be causing harm to addicts, perhaps. So that's my analogy there. I think that they are aware that there is, a sort of fetish market or whatever, or a market of creeps or whatever, and they are pandering to that while pandering to all the other markets as well. And so that's why you have Sister and Monster X as well, who've got completely different sort of images and completely different markets, to something like, IVE or boyfriend.
Mhm.
Let's move on to whatever else we got. How much responsibility do you think public figures should take for the actions of their fans? I
Mm.
can think of very few idols who have openly called out their fans, and it might be due to financial reasons, but perhaps not only financial reasons. What's your take? Do you also view some of your own followers as perhaps toxic? Do you care if
Mm.
they are?
I'm a fucking private account with like 200, 300 followers, so
I
I
think
really
I
don't
think
think I have that much influence. Maybe you. I think that's your end.
I think the last bit was directed at me specifically.
Mm.
So, are some of my followers toxic? Maybe. Do I care if they are? Well, yeah, I do. I mean, I try and make myself reasonably clear. That's why I have like a monthly question and answer thing with, where any reader can pretty much ask me anything they want about anything, and I'll just answer it honestly, without all the memey stuff that goes on in some of the other posts.
Mm.
Um, so that's actually one of the reasons why I have that, so I can just be really upfront with people who might be confused, and I think that hopefully helps some people. And honestly, I haven't found too many instances of people who follow me being really toxic. Well, it has happened sometimes, and when it happens, I sort of cringe and sort of go, "Oh God," and but I don't go in and tell them off. But I do try and keep what I see in mind when I create new content. And think, well,
Mm.
if they got that impression, let's do this new content a different way, so maybe they can understand things better, I guess.
Yeah, there's a bit to, I guess, unpack about that question. So what I remember is a time when like Ariana Grande, I think her fans did something along the lines of like harassing a journalist. And I think she got called out for not doing anything. And she was kind of like, what do you want me to do about it? Because it's like, look, I think we've all had enough of me talking about, shit experiences with armies and BTS and how
Yeah.
they basically do nothing. I think there's a bit of irony. Like, I think it's like it's one or another in the sense of, okay, so you're UNICEF ambassadors against ending violence, but when your fans are some of the biggest bullies on the internet, you're mute.
Mm,
So it's like, do you want to be actual advocates, or do you want to just let you not be held responsible for the actions of people who, aren't you? So it's like, I understand that, if you've got millions of people in a fan base, it is very difficult to attempt to even regulate that at all. So on a certain level, difficult. However, on another level, how are you marketing yourself? And does that hold up to reality? Um, yeah, it's also kind of just like one of those things like, what is it actually going to take before anything seriously ever happens in any fandom space, not necessarily K-pop, because it's like, cyberbullying does result in people taking their own lives. So it's like, does it take someone in K-pop actually dying from a suicide attempt because they were dogpiled on Twitter, until people actually realized how toxic it is?
mm.
Obviously, I would never wish that upon anyone, so I hope it doesn't come to that stage. But it is just a very, I don't know, interesting, for lack of a better word, uh, thing to try and draw a line through of what's the limit. Where does it stop? Where does the buck stop at the end of the day?
Mm. Well, I think fans are, responsible for their own actions.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, there's no telling what you know, fans would do if the artist was to get blamed for everything.
Hmm.
But at the same time, if you are an artist and you've got fans who are dickheads, it's I think it's always good when the artist says, "Hey, my fans are kind of being dicks." Stop
I
doing that.
agree.
It always,
I absolutely
yeah.
agree, but the biggest problem is it's like there was a moment I remember a while ago, and it's kind of like dog whistly stuff, but it was like Jin almost tried
Mm,
to try and get people to back off a bit with how certain fans talk about certain other artists in K-pop. And I just remember the quote was something along the lines of like, "Oh, we're grateful for other artists that have paved the way before us." It was to do with like
mm.
a Billboard thing. And the fans, his so-called fans, were turning on him. They were like, "Oh, the maid is talking," or like, the hag member, like it basically isolates you and the people, because people in a lot of these fandom spaces are very much ride or fucking die.
Mm,
So, if you put your life into trashing the shit out of every other group, and then one of the members of the group that you've been going to war for now says, "Hey, you were wrong to do this," there's like this cognitive dissonance. And I remember reading somewhere once, it's like a vague quote, so don't take me word for word or whatever as scripture, but it's
mm.
like the more that you present someone with facts on something that they are wrong about, the harder they then double down on the lie.
Yeah, that's
So,
that's that's a well-known thing, and it's interesting
yeah,
too
that's human.
because the
So it's like,
smarter people actually do this more than dumber people. because
yeah,
because dumber people are kind of a little bit used to some
being
people
wrong.
are dumb, but they're self-aware enough to know they're kind of a bit stupid. So when
Mm,
someone tells them, "Oh, you're wrong," they go, "Oh, maybe I should consider that." Whereas someone smart
mm,
can rationalize their own beliefs very well. They're
exactly.
very clever at, yeah.
That's what I try again. Like, I don't want to necessarily say whether I'm smart or whether I'm dumb, because I think in a lot of ways intelligence can be very subjective based on pretty much exactly what you've just said then. Like, it's all well and good to be a IQ smart person. Like, I'm pretty sure, is it Richard Dawkins who's that guy that's supposedly very intelligent man, but then he's kind of gone off the fucking deep end with the racism or eugenics or some shit
No,
along those
I'm not
lines?
sure.
I know he's one of the modern day philosophers. I'm going to Google it now. But he's, one of those modern day philosophers who kind of gained himself a following for being very smart white man.
Mm,
And then, oh, what a surprise, the very smart white man is into eugenics. I mean, look into eugenics as a whole thing, and that's supposedly smart scientists, anthropologist types who advocate for fucking extinctions of other races. And, that's not intelligent. That's the kind of level that you should be going, maybe that's wrong.
well, that was
Um,
phased out of academia, quite some time ago now.
yeah, I'm looking him up. Richard Dawkins, British evolutionary biologist and author. So there you go. We're talking about phasing it out of academics, but he is very much a pretty sure that he's into. Yeah, he's the guy who wrote The God Delusion, which is
Mm, a
high
book.
five on high five on the atheism. By all means, criticize organized religion and the evils that has done unto the universe. But yeah, I'm just googling Richard Dawkins eugenics. That is absolutely coming up with results.
Right.
So it's very much a pipeline of believing your own superiority. So, yeah, that's always going to be an issue. So, in terms of like, how do we get from K-pop being held accountable for fandom behavior to eugenics? That is the AustralianSana pipeline explanation. Thank you.
Mm. um, when you were in Korea, did anyone assume you were a Russian prostitute since you're a tall white woman?
That's actually a funny thing because I know that there is, it's like, oh, it's a certain word, but it's like white horse is the translation.
Right.
But it's, yeah, like the assumption is you're a Russian prostitute because you're white. I think that, no, it did not happen to me personally, but I also don't go out that much. So I kind of wasn't given the opportunity for people to make that assumption because, like, I'm a very, very boring person. I spend a lot of my time in my own company. So don't get me wrong. Obviously, living in Korea, I did go out every now and then, but it wasn't a regular weekly occurrence. So again, not really in the environment, particularly like, maybe a clubbing sort of environment that people would potentially make those kinds of false assumptions. Because they don't really assume it when you're on school campus. I can tell you that at least.
Yep.
Let's see. Again, I remember, again, reading something along the lines of, like, the percentage of foreigners in Korea. It was an article that came up on my Facebook feed that a friend reposted. It was like, I was laughing when I read it because it was basically, oh no, won't somebody think of the poor white people? But it was basically saying that, like, to get a job as a white model in Korea used to be so much easier than what it is now because thanks to the explosion of BTS and other Hallyu entertainment, there's a lot more white people in the country now.
Right.
So because of that boom in white people, I think they're probably, learning how to deal with white people being there and not all of them potentially being Russian prostitutes.
Right. What was your thoughts on the climate change awareness message of Maison by Dreamcatcher?
Ironic for any K-pop group to do climate change awareness when you're doing mass production of albums that get bulk bought for fan signs, which is now leading to a whole new thing of, like, apparently JYP in the future is now not going to be releasing physical albums, or they're changing the way that they release albums so they don't include the CD. And I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding me, because the same rich cunts all buy 1,000 albums to get into a Twice fan sign. They're now going to stop making fucking albums, so I can't even buy my one goddamn CD. Like, fuck you.
You forgot the NFTs.
Oh, yeah.
Are there any?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Are there any AustralianSana NFTs?
No, there are not.
Are going to be some?
No, not in this lifetime.
You might have been asked this before. Someone asked,
Okay.
can you do another write-up of what was said at the corridor meeting you attended in 2016, if you still
Yes, I do
remember?
apologize. I do apologize. It's like a work in progress, and I swear I've got notes somewhere, but it's like I moved between moving from Korea to moving back to where I was living to then moving again to moving again to moving again. So I've moved like 4 times since then. I can give a very brief write-up. I'm pretty sure that physical notes would be back in the house that I have just left. I'm pretty sure I know which box it would be, and it's like, fuck. But yeah, in terms of the meeting, it was a bit thinly veiled in terms of, like, there was no confirmation that Jessica and Tyler Kwan are dating at all. But it's the kind of thing that you can just be like, yeah, that checks out. So you can make certain assumptions, kind of just like, it's very much like what Jessica wrote in her book. Like, so if you want to get the meeting of Corridell, like half of it would be in the Shine/Bright books.
Yep.
As a non-suable, non-official autobiography. This is fiction. I do remember one person in that meeting asking about the other girl group that was there. What was the other group that used to be under Corridell? It was a girl group.
Shit, I don't even know.
Yeah, I'm Googling it now because, like, I can hear their song in my head. Playback. Thank you.
Oh, okay, they're on Corridor. Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that.
So I remember one person from the meeting actually being from Playback, like not from Playback, but like being a fan of Playback. So they were kind of there for that rather than to actually ask about Jessica specifically. They were kind of just like, yo, what's happening with the girl group I stand? And then Tyler was a bit like, yo, I'll talk to you at the end. Yeah, I'm just trying to remember. Jessica very briefly did appear. it was kind of like she popped her head in to see what was going on and like waved at the people there. So it's like, a bit of a sign that she, stops by to care about the fans, and she cares, like wanting to know, like wanting to acknowledge, I guess, us and the people that did go to the meeting. I just found it a very interesting thing. Like, can you ever imagine like YG or JYP or SM having like, here's our open meeting, come talk to the CEO, and like 10 people showing up? I'm like, I'm a Jessica fan. I wouldn't go as far as saying like I'm a diehard stan, but I like her and I can definitely empathize with her side of the situation of what went on.
Yep.
So, of course I'm like, I'm just interested to go along and just listen to anyone potentially providing any sort of statement. But again, with anything like that, it's also going to be what a company is telling you. So, do I take Tyler Kwan's word as gospel? Absolutely not, especially as a stockbroker. I was trying to get an idea on like what he actually even did, and it seems very NFT in the sense of like stocks, stonks, like that stonks meme. That's just what I imagine when I see Tyler. I'll send you a meme on Twitter or wherever. I'll DM you the meme, and that's just what I think of Tyler Kwan.
Right.
You can put that in there, but it's at the end of the day, it's like, what did he say? It was something to do with like, how Jessica's backup dancers for Fly ended up being backup dancers for Tiffany's I Just Want to Dance, and there was something like that was involved that he kind of shaded. So whether like he kind of made some shade towards SM for using the same choreographer team at the same sort of timing.
Right.
I remember at one point someone in the room brought up like a lack of promotion. So like someone was just like, hey, why don't we see Jessica's new album being released, being promoted? And he said something along the lines of like how like fans already do certain amounts of promotion, which, confirming the thing that everybody already knows of companies relying on fans to do their own work for them as unpaid fan labor. But it was just something along the lines of like, oh, if we pay for this billboard, but people already know who Jessica is and already know the album's coming out, so what gain do we get from doing that? Something along those lines. Yeah, it's hard for me to, again, this is something that happened, 2016, so 6 years ago, off the top of my head, memory pretty shit. Sort of interesting experience, I guess.
Do you think that Pledis girl groups after school in Preston would have gotten treated better under the present HYBE management regime?
No, they would have had the girlfriend treatment where they basically just get bought out and then disbanded because they want to bring in the newer, younger girl group that they're in complete control over.
So the same thing would have happened anyway, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yep. Bit of a multi-part question here, so take notes. Hi, I'm a long-time Kpopalypse reader. I've avoided BTS's fandom like the plague to protect my sanity. But
I wonder why.
But I'm obviously aware of their music and successes, and I've gotten curious about how some of their songs are about burning out or pretending to love their fans, like Fake Love.
Mm-hmm.
And I do wonder how they're dealing with global fame after hearing AustralianSana's trivia, thoughts, and tea. So I'd like to ask to her, 1, do you have any tea or gossip about BTS/Big Hit/HYBE that people like me who don't know much about them have no idea about? I do know what happened to Glam, though, because I was one of their 3 stans, but I didn't actually know they came from the same company as BTS.
Yep. Yeah, like I'm not exactly, like I'm definitely not this insider that maybe certain people think I am. Like I'm very much just a fan on the outside trying to enjoy my content, and then every now and then I come across a person who maybe has had that industry experience. So it's a bit boring, but when BTS came to Australia for the Sydney concert in 2016, which I went to, yeah, it was fun. Again, I didn't meet anybody. I wasn't backstage. I paid for my ticket like everybody else, and I had a great time. But I know one of my friends was like walking around the city and saw, I think it was, what's the bloody hotel that's in Sydney that's fancy? I think it's the Star It's a fancy hotel in Sydney that has like a bunch of boutique designer shops there, and Seokjin and Jungkook were both in Gucci, and apparently one of my friends basically saw like them bantering with each other the exact same way that they do on camera on their shows, like playfully kicking or something like that. So Seokjin or Jin and Jungkook, at least in 2016, were very much like actual friends, not necessarily just co-workers, but they pretty much acted the same way in real life as they did on camera. Both from a friend who did an interview with them in 2014, and then another friend, this is not the same friend with the kicking or bantering anecdote, this is another friend who I think was like, I don't know, again, I don't know positions and titles and whatnot, because again, this is not my job, but I think they were something like they were the coordinator or something, like they directly looked after them whilst they were in Sydney, like they were the ones in charge of like managing them getting to the hotels and getting to the concerts and all that stuff. So they had a lot of direct interaction with them. I think I jokingly asked, does Hosok pour the milk or the cereal first? And he pours his cereal first. So there's the real tea. Hosok pours his cereal first before the milk. And what else was I thinking? Yeah, they're all like nice, polite people. So this is where one of my tweets that got grossly taken out of context came from, was Jungkook, from all reports from any person that I've ever met who's ever worked with them in any capacity, all of them have very positive things to say about him. So I made a tweet along the lines of like, for someone who's basically grown up in the industry, being surrounded by, like sugar mamas, as in like how fan sites treat idols. They just spoil the shit out of them. They buy them everything that they want. So he's grown up from a very young formative age of development, constantly being told that he's like the best thing to ever walk the planet. And a lot of people who are children that grow up in that environment, obvious example, Justin Bieber, they kind of go through that really sort of, it goes to their head stage. But yeah, I basically was like, wow, it's amazing that he didn't turn out like that. And for some reason, people really twisted that into the total opposite of what I meant. And they're like, how dare you call Jungkook a sociopath? And I'm like, no, I'm fucking saying it's a miracle that he's not one.
Yeah.
Like, and again, they're saying like, oh, you're saying that because like you think BTS race. I'm like, no, I'm just saying he's a good kid from reports of any person who I've ever, and again, it's not like I know his inner circle or anything, but just the piping hot tea is John Jungkook is a hard worker who is polite to staff, and at last account I heard, didn't have his head up his ass.
I can relate to the misunderstandings of where people sort of interpret your position as the exact opposite, because
Yeah.
I'm getting quite a lot of that on TikTok at the moment.
Oh Jesus. Are you on TikTok?
I'm not on TikTok, but a fan of my writings posts stuff of mine onto TikTok,
Oh fuck.
and yeah, and there's not a great deal of intellectual capacity going on
I
in
mean, to
the
be fair,
TikTok
TikTok
world.
is basically the place that spread like wildfire for the whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. So you're not exactly going to get the beacon of critical thinking over there.
Yeah, to give you an example, the most recent one, um, I reviewed a video by Ali, and I mentioned there that it's this video of Ali, the singer, and she's singing some song, and she's got a whole band backing up,
Mm.
and and it's a very lonely looking stage because there's these big wide angles of the stage, and it's just her in this big empty room, and right up against the back wall are all the performers of
Mm.
all the instrumentalists, the drummers and keyboard players and whatnot. And they're sort of in the shadows, way in the background. You can't even see their faces; they're just silhouettes, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I commented this, and this is a show that a lot of different groups go on, and idol groups and stuff.
I think I know which one you're
Yeah,
talking about. Yeah, I've
yeah.
seen clips of it.
You've probably seen, like, plenty of idols have been on this show. And anyway, so I've made the comment, I hate the visual format of the show because the band's stuck against the back wall. It would be great if they made it feel a bit more warm and inviting. But I guess they got to leave all that room for when they have the 12-member groups on, so everyone can see their short skirts properly or whatever. Basically making the point that they're you know gearing it for a visual presentation, so people can basically just have effective perving angles, and they don't really care about having a band environment, right?
Hmm.
And so the comments on that from the TikTokers are, he spilled, but the short skirts comment is just weird and unnecessary. you know, Especially knowing
Yeah.
he's a guy. It doesn't sit right with me. And it's like, why do you think I'm saying it? I'm trying to point out the creepiness. I'm not saying
Mm.
I'm not saying it's yay creepiness. I'm saying, look, this is creepy, potentially,
Yeah.
depending on how you use it. So yeah, and that reminded me a lot when I've read that of your situation where people thought you were accusing the BTS guy being a sociopath when what you were clearly saying was the opposite. That
Hmm.
he's actually given his environment, he's actually come out quite a nice guy. It's apparently so. Yeah,
Yeah.
and those sort of misunderstandings are really common in the K-pop world. I think IU had plenty of that with 23, because she was just trying to say a message which I thought was pretty straightforward, but it was obviously a bit too sophisticated for most people. And yeah, it seems to be a
Brainwave.
thing. Anyway, this guy had more questions. Second one from him: is there something you'd like to say to people who, like us, who only observe BTS casually from afar?
I've got friends who are like that, and I think it's probably the best way to really enjoy the content. So, I mean, if you want to keep doing that, that's probably the best thing to do, especially for your own mental health, because, like,
Yeah,
what do you really gain from standing and getting deep into standom? It's like mental illness.
pretty much. Yes. Um, do you think
Yeah, like
Yeah,
basically just to add on to that, it's just like if you enjoy streaming the music and you like, if you enjoy just like listening to a few songs on Spotify every now and then,
mm,
that's totally fine. Like people always make it sound like you're not streaming this 200 times a day and knowing everyone's blood type and their exact height and weight and all that shit. You're not a real army. And it's like, that is exactly how you turn people off of becoming fans.
yeah,
And then they wonder why Billboard reformed the charts so that both buying the same song 20 times doesn't actually count 20 times anymore, and then they wonder why they're not number one for more than 2 weeks anymore. And it's like, because the people like this lovely casual inquirer in our DMs right now possibly see that shit and then go, yeah, I don't want anything to do with that group at all. So the casual general public potential fan base that doesn't actually want to be involved in the actual fan base instead wants nothing to do with them at all, and therefore they don't get any general public recognition and leaders. And then you wonder why does this group who sells out all their concert tickets so instantly never get any other outside recognition? Because you're all fucking insane and no one else other than the people in your circle want anything to do with your circle.
Do you think BTS does hard drugs? No doubt they smoke weed, but what about other things?
Yeah, Taehyung looks like he does weed at least. But no, I bless my son, and I say that as a supporter and occasional user myself. So, yeah, I mean, if I was them, I would have done much worse.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be alive if I was them. Put it this way, like I could not, no way, ever mentally cope with the level of fame that they live with. I barely cope with my own fucking life, and I'm a nobody, let alone having to deal with that level of fame. So I cannot make any assumption at all. I wouldn't want to. I just know that, whatever they do to survive, it's a situation that I thank God I would, not that I'm religious anyway, but I thank whatever force of that makes my life. I just thank it that I'm not in that position because I could not handle it at all. So I just think of that rather than what they're doing and how they're coping. I can't even.
um, Speaking of which, the last thing they wanted to say is not really a question. It's just in past episodes, he sounded pretty exhausted and burnt out from work and fandom insanity. So I hope you're taking care of yourself and feeling better nowadays. Thank you for being one of the few sane and level-headed armies around.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, yeah,
Are you
it's
an
like,
army even? Oh, yes.
I think I'm technically still like
Yeah.
I was in that last fan batch on the Weverse
Right.
subscription.
Yep.
So
So
but it's like you pay for that and then you have to pay for like whatever the package to be sent out membership wise is, and I think I never got around to it because COVID kept delaying all their postage and shipping and stuff. But like I still like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm always ride or die for their earlier 2014, 15, 16 era. And like the memories that I do have of the group specifically, and not like fandom stuff. Like Taehyung literally saw my fucking artwork and smiled at it, and that's in a Bangtan bomb. So y'all fuckers can't tell me shit. At me when Taehyung ever acknowledges your artworks. At me when Jungkook fucking waves at you from literally less than a meter away, and not like, oh, he saw me in the crowd at the concert when he's looking at a billion fucking light sticks. I'm talking like side of the stage before he was meant to go on to perform, whilst the next group that was in front of them at Mnet Countdown were currently on the stage. So yeah, y'all ain't shit.
Yeah, we know. um, let's move on. Uh, do you find Sebastian Stan, the Winter Soldier actor, to be fappable?
Um,
Winter Soldier
uh,
actor.
yeah, I know who he
I
is.
don't.
He's like, yeah,
I
I
can look him up.
he was recently Tommy Lee in the Pammy and Tommy autobiography, not autobiography, but that biographical film they made of them.
Oh, okay.
So it's like I've seen him in a few things. I enjoyed Captain Marvel and the Winter Soldier.
Hmm.
I understand the appeal. I understand why people would find him fappable. I'm just very much neutral.
Hmm. He does look like Tommy Lee. I can see there's a picture of him in the Tommy Lee getup, and he looks like Tommy Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hair and makeup, pretty intense, but a bit of bone structure there as well. So yeah, I mean, like I think he's a conventionally handsome man.
Mm. Cool, cool. If your pet died, would you immortalize your love for them by going to a taxidermist?
Oh, please don't say that. My dog's getting old. I'm like, I just moved out of home and I'm sad at the thought that by the time I ever go back to visit, he might not be there anymore. So I'm very sad and I love my dog. Taxidermy, not the way that I would choose to remember my beloved boys.
No, no. Yeah, I just got urns with the ashes for my cats that I had. I think that's enough.
Mm.
Um, would you say that Starship's new group, Ivy,
Yeah.
is a good indication of the current K-pop idol market trends, i.e., one, the sole non-Korean member is the rave from Japan, possibly indicating that Chinese market is dead end for K-pop, so they're trying to appeal to the old faithful Japanese market. And two, the face members of the group, Wonyoung and Yujin, are Korean-born, but seem to have specifically taught English heavily, e.g. there's not just a token Western-born member with English fluency, showing that in the post-BTS Blackpink world, they're trying to actively chase the Western markets.
Yeah, I find that interesting in the sense of Won Young's English. I'm wondering where she picked it up, and I don't want to be like, objectifying or whatever, that sort of.
We don't do any of that stuff here at
No,
Kpopalypse.com.
we try not to. I really don't. But it's just like, I don't want to be patronizing. That's what I was trying to think of the word of like, oh, she speaks English so well. Because but I mean that in terms of like, she seems very much fluent. Speaking as someone, who lived in South Korea and is conversational, but I would not be able to speak Korean the way that she can speak English. She is very fluent sounding. So I'm wondering if she lived abroad maybe as a child or something like that.
Yep.
Like her accent and pronunciation is very on point. I mean, there's definite trends that are there that are prominent in other groups in the way that they're structured. I wouldn't go as far as saying the Chinese market is dead. I mean, Jessica has just appeared on that Chinese recent reality show and placed second there, which is pretty good for that. And then there's one of the girls from Everglow, who is a semi-recent group as well. She's Chinese. So I think that and like Ning from aespa, Chinese as well. So I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a completely dead market, but I feel like it's definitely not as big of a target market because of interpolitics between China and Korea. Like,
Yep.
The whole recent thing that they did, the,
Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan, China then posted a whole one China stuff that every one of the idols then have to regurgitate. And again, that's a nuanced topic. And that was the funniest thing on Twitter, was a whole bunch of people. It was like, I swear to God, I saw more people on Twitter actually saying, stop pretending that you know more about Korea and Asian relations than actual people. It's okay to just say you don't know nothing. Stop talking like you know something. Like, no one was actually talking like they really know much about the topic, but it's like everyone, it's like, I feel like that's the current trend now, is everyone's jumping to police everyone else when people aren't actually even doing the thing that they're trying to police.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a whole nuanced discussion about Asian geopolitical relations and China being a very authoritarian state, which therefore, it's that balance between, I think you should be able to discuss how Chinese idols don't necessarily have much of a free will to be able to post government or political opinions, but I think you should also be able to discuss how that lack of political freedom and potential genuine belief that those individuals hold, having grown up in that environment where they're not really taught much else or given the capability of critical opinion, I think them being given platforms internationally to then spout that rhetoric is, an act of propaganda in itself. So, I think you should be able to be critical of that whilst also having nuance in understanding their upbringing and how those opinions and beliefs are formed. But yeah, I can understand why there's a reduction in the amount of Chinese idols. Like, I remember when this is definitely another one of those tweets that look actually really bad out of context, and I actually went back and saw it years later, and I was like, holy shit, no wonder people hated me for that, because I read that without the context, and I fucking think that's awful. But basically, when WJSN first debuted, it was like the whole China restriction happened either in the same month or the same week or very, very, very close. So you could see this group was literally tailor-made for the Chinese market, and then bam, instant restrictions. So I was like, oh fuck, there goes millions of dollars down the drain. And I was kind of just like, damn, you may as well just disband them already. And I'm like, I'm not literally saying to disband this group.
Yeah.
Like, I've liked multiple songs that they've come out with. So, for example, Babyface, B-side on one of their albums, fucking banger of a song. But my God, I just feel so sorry for everyone involved in the project, because, like, they had a very clear target market and plan on how to go ahead, and it just blown up overnight.
Do you also think that Wonyoung's puffy double eyelids and big pouty lips are products of the Gangnam Fairy?
Hard to say, because if you look at pictures of her when she first was a 13-year-old on Produce 101, that you can definitely still see a lot of her features from there to where she is now. And it's like, where would she have had the time, being constantly in the public spotlight, to really go and have major reconstructive surgery? So I have a feeling that, I'm not going to be in complete denial about any potential work done, but I feel like whatever procedures, if she has had them done, would be more like fillers rather than, a whole jaw shave or something insane like that.
Cool.
Or double eyelid tape or something.
I can't even remember what she looks like. But
again, it's like, not that I really go out of my way to look at pictures of a minor, but again, it's just, she's very much a prominent figure in K-pop. And I remember becoming a bit of a fan of hers during IZ*ONE, because she was like 15. And I know that you talk about like how much of a writer's credit does an idol actually have, but she was involved with writing some of the music. So I'm just like, this is a young kid being very exposed in this industry. And I just remember looking at her and just thinking, I really, really hope you've got people looking after you. So like, I'm just wishing her the best constantly.
Yeah. Next question. Regarding Bruce Willis being willing to do anything if you pay him. This is from going back to the last podcast.
Yeah, this is your topic.
Yeah. According to Gossip Rags, he allegedly has the onset of dementia, so he's doing all of these cheap cash grab movies where he gets paid $1 million for a day of work to build up a nest egg for his family. Does this recontextualize anything for you?
Again, that's more your area of expertise, but that sort of situation, you wouldn't wish it upon anyone. So.
Well, no, you couldn't. I mean, Yeah, I mean, I'm not really a fan of Bruce Willis anyway, so I'm not
Mm.
going to give a crap. Um, I think maybe it's karma for the terrible albums he put out in the 1980s. I've got a couple of Bruce Willis albums on vinyl that I picked up from. People don't know that he was a singer before he was an actor,
I don't fucking know that.
and oh man, the Bruce Willis. Just go on YouTube, just look up Bruce Willis singing, and just try and hear those 80s albums of Bruce Willis, and yeah, they're pretty terrible. Um, yeah, you you won't thank me, but
There we go. The Kpopalypse experience once again proves to be educational.
so and once you honestly, I think once you hear those albums, you'll be pretty cool with pretty much anything bad happening to them. Next question: do you consider songs entirely in English, like "Yummy Love" by Momoland, to be K-pop?
Mm. Yeah, that's actually a really good question because I kind of get stuck on that when I make my own end of year K-pop playlists, and I'm like, this song slaps, but it's in English, but it's by a K-pop group. Um, yeah, it's especially even harder when you factor in like, hey, are all the members of the group even Korean? So it's
Yeah, that's it.
like for example, I could kind of get away with calling the Wonder Girls English songs K-pop because the Wonder Girls are a Korean group.
Well, I always look at it as, is it driven by or trying to exist in the Korean industry?
Hmm.
That's what I do it as. Like, so I would call Wonder Girls, K-pop because JYP's behind it,
Mm.
regardless of where they were based, regardless of what they were singing.
Mm.
Um, I'd call Luna's Star K-pop. It's completely in English. I mean, they had
Fucking banger of a song.
um, there's there's plenty of Monster X songs which are completely in English. I'd call those
Mm.
K-pop. I don't think the language really matters because even when you think about it, half the actual Korean songs are in English, have got English choruses
Yeah.
anyway.
Mm.
So there's always been that all the way
It's
through.
part of the K-pop machine, so to speak.
Yeah, I define it as, is the K-pop machine behind this?
Mm.
And if it is, then well, it's K-pop. Or is it something where they want the K-pop machine to be behind it? I mean,
Are the same people who would be consuming it as K-pop consuming this.
yeah, maybe that bit of that as well. Yeah,
But yeah, an interesting one that would be a kind of an example of this is a couple I can think of. One, Miss A had a song years ago called Love Alone. I think it was like for the Kiss and Cry thing, TV show or whatever, and that was entirely in English. And I was like, oh damn, it's quite a good song. I enjoy it. Um, and then more recently, ITZY have a collab with BB Rexa, or two members, Ryujin and Yeji. And this is a good example for what you've just said because, like, it's not the K-pop machine necessarily that's made it because it was originally BB Rex's song, and she's now recruited the members as, like, guest artists to record a verse on her song. But at the same time, I think she's doing that to therefore target ITZY's fan base to then, get ITZY's fan base to listen to her music, kind of like a mutual exchange, mutually beneficial. So on one hand, for ITZY, it gets them a bit more international exposure, and then for BB Rexa, it gets her a pretty loyal, big-ish fan base, therefore listening to her music, her songs, even though it's in English.
yep.
Hard line to draw.
Yes.
Generally, I'll add it. I'll add it to my end of year playlist if I like the song and it's got a K-pop artist in it. That's basically my line.
Cool. Did the cancellation of cultural establishment TV soap series Neighbours make you feel sad?
Not necessarily because I haven't watched it in like years, but it's an interesting sort of like nostalgia trip, I guess.
Yeah,
It makes you think back of.
I haven't seen it since I was probably 10 years old, and it would come up when I was waiting for something else, and I'd see 5 seconds of it, turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't into soaps back then. Since you're
It was kind of like the forbidden thing for me that I wasn't allowed to watch.
Really?
So therefore it made me want to watch it as a child.
Neighbours,
Yeah, when I was like, 7 or like, late years of primary school because my parents didn't
Really?
think it was appropriate.
well, what's inappropriate about Neighbours though? Well, aside from it being crap.
I don't know, some of the storylines were a bit like, husband cheating and affairs and like teacher-student love affairs or whatever kind of stuff that
All
you
right.
kind of look back like, oh yeah, that is maybe a bit inappropriate.
Yeah. Since you're an Aespa stan, can you please give us a quick summary of the differences between Earth and Quenya?
uh, I think Kwangya is like metaverse.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think Yeppy's a banger. I'm too stupid for lore. I'm too old for that shit.
Um, Saying cunt is now a bannable offence on Twitter, allegedly.
Fuck. Oh, fuck, I'm dead. That's why I'm private. They can't get me.
As an Australian, does it make you feel discriminated?
Absolutely. This is like cultural war.
Yeah, I'm quite upset about
This
it.
is like fucking punctuation for us cunts.
Here's another one. This is about this question's showing its age a bit because it's about something that happened a little while ago. So Jay from Day 6 has been in a mess considering he called his friend Jamie a thought.
Thought.
I can never get my head around how to pronounce that. A thought. Not a word in my vocab, to be honest. So all the people who have defended him have stopped doing this, and many K-pop fans have kind of been hit hard with the fact that Jay ain't crystal clear like they thought. What do you think about this whole situation?
I think it's just another prime example of how idols are very much their marketing and their like management and image management. Because it's like you look at how Amber was when she was a part of FX and SM, and then she became cringe after she left, and now you got Jay from Day 6, and I think like some of the stuff he's posted as being kind of very incel-y in the way that he talks about women or some other sort of thing like that. So yeah, it's kind of just like, once again, we are reminded that K-pop is a machine, but sometimes the machine has its reasons for being the machine, because, we all love to say like, my idol's talented and it's not the company that's making them, it's them that's making the company. But I'm like, it's a bit of a mutually beneficial, I would say, relationship. And this is kind of like a proof of what happens once that company goes away.
Yeah, the thing is, that's the reason why they have the strict image management, because if you get the kids in front of the microphone saying whatever they want, they'll just say the sort of things that kids say to each other, and that's probably pretty normal conversation for two young people to have, but except it's just not normally in public.
Especially when you then have the additional sort of image/pressure that idols have of having to, not be problematic at all, ever.
Yeah. And then there is the fact that Jamie has actually changed her appearance quite a lot. So even though it's a very, it's not what I'd say to someone. It's, underneath there is an actual real question, which is, that Jamie has changed her image quite a lot in a very short space of time, including lots of plastic surgery, which is fairly obvious. It's a complete transformation from the, after school club days of Park Jimin from 15 and.
Yeah, kind of like I feel for her in the sense of like she's literally got the same name as a fucking guy from BTS, so good luck ever coming up in the Google searches and algorithms.
Exactly. I mean, it's just good marketing sense to change a name for sure.
But that can also lead to an identity crisis, and maybe that identity crisis can manifest physically. And then again, I'm not speaking so for the rest of this part, I'm now not speaking on Jamie. I'm just speaking generally as something that happens, be it in South Korea, in
sure.
Western celebrities as well. But it's like with plastic surgery, it can very much be a rabbit hole that people fall down, particularly if you're doing it for what I would say is the wrong reasons, because certain people, maybe they've just grown up and they've never liked their nose, and then they get a nose job, and then they're happy with their new nose, and then they never get anything else done. So I'm not slandering plastic surgery as a whole, but it can be dangerous as a rabbit hole for people who hyperfixate on a particular body image part that they're not happy with and think that, oh, my nose is so hideous. Everything that's wrong with me is all to do with my nose. And if I get my nose done, then it's going to fix these problems and I'm going to become much better looking, and by becoming so much better looking, it's therefore going to play into, people are calling me ugly. So when I get the nose fixed, that I'm not going to be ugly anymore. And then people are going to call me pretty and everything's going to be fixed. And then all of a sudden they get the nose fixed, but people are still not calling them pretty, or whatever problem that they had manifested onto their nose doesn't magically actually go away. And then it then turns into, oh, the nose wasn't the problem, but oh, maybe my lips aren't full enough. Maybe my eyes aren't the right shape. Maybe I need to have buccal fat removal, literal procedure, from my cheeks to make me have more defined cheekbones. And it's just this hyperfixation after hyperfixation after hyperfixation, where it's like you're just picking each new thing apart about yourself until, eventually you have this entirely different face altogether, and you still haven't really identified the root cause of the actual problems. So that's not Jamie specific. That is just a reality of how plastic surgery can be, and how the market itself for it can be very predatory and very insidious. There was a recent thing that was like a news post. Like I would assume if you've got any form of social media, you probably came across the plastic surgeon who talked about Natalie Dyer from Stranger Things, and how if I could redo Natalie Dyer's face, this is what I would do to her.
Oh, I haven't seen this, no.
Oh my God, it's a TikTok that has since been deleted, but the TikToker is someone who is like a beauty esthetician, or like she works at a plastic surgery clinic, and she's like, so first of all, her cheeks are wrong, and then her jawline is this, and then I would put this procedure here. And she basically like completely reconstructed Natalie Dyer's face, or Natalia, sorry, I'm pronouncing her name wrong, but people will know who I'm talking about. Yeah. Basically just gave her, took her from what I would describe as, she's a pretty girl, but she has unique features. So like she has quite a strong jawline. And, certain features are more pronounced. And, I think that's what makes her pretty, is the fact that she's also uniquely different. She definitely stands out. Like if you see a picture of her, you're like, oh, she's definitely not looking like any other celebrity that's currently popular. Yeah. But that's a great thing, because it helps differentiate her, and it also shows that beauty comes in different shapes and sizes. But yeah, then you have this plastic surgeon who goes out publicly saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and this is what she'd look like if she got all the features done. And then the photoshopped image of what she would look like is just very generic. And it's like, you're taking this beautiful girl and you're turning her into generic girl for the sake of being conventional attractive. And it's like, that is a horrible message to send to anybody, because, what if there's, and this is the thing, like other girls sitting at home who aren't Natalia Dyer, who aren't millionaires, who aren't adults and confident in their appearance by now, they sit there and they see, oh, so having a strong jawline's unattractive, my strong jawline's unattractive, then they're now going to go, if they're young and impressionable, they can then spend years now thinking how ugly and unattractive and how much they need to change it. So it's something that can start at a very young age, and it's very insidious.
Yep.
Moving on.
Yes, moving on. The recent A-Pink song Dilemma was supposed to be out to honour A-Pink's 10th anniversary in 2021, but the promotions were delayed a year because Chirong had some bullying accusations. Few questions. Why do these cancel culture parasites making accusations always seem to come out of the woodwork when entertainers are trying to promote new projects? Why don't companies ignore them? And why are high school bullying accusations from 1,000 years seemingly the most common cancel culture accusation for K-pop performers specifically?
To start with high school specifically, the way that we as Westerners perceive high school bullying is very different from the reality of what high school bullying is in Korea. Again, I'm not an expert on this. I'm not a cultural expert as much. I've lived there for a little bit, but I didn't have lived experience of high school and high school bullying in Korea. But, obviously, like, high school bullying has impacts all around the world. But South Korea has one of, if not the highest suicide rates be it like suicide rates in general, suicide rates from high school. So it's like, it's not just like, you're ugly and I'm going to write mean things about you on Facebook and stuff. It's like, we physically bully and like harass and beat the shit out of you. And then we follow you home. And then when you're at school, like the schooling hours are different in Korea to what they are in the Western world. So it's like you're there really early at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then you're there until like 5 o'clock or something like that, or 4 o'clock, and then you have after school academy that you go to after that till 10 o'clock. So it's like there's no escape. This is your entire life. So if you're a victim, you're not just like a victim from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, which again is still a horrible thing to experience, having experienced it myself. Don't wish it on anyone. But it's just that on a whole other level.
Yeah,
So it's
you kind of live
not,
at school, and school's very, because
it's your life.
yeah, it's your life. It's much more culturally important because it's such a much bigger part of your life, and there's a whole
And
achievement
yeah,
culture there as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
there's
Yeah,
a lot. That
that would be a blog post, whatever we're doing, podcast on its own, and you'd want to actually get people who have that real lived experience on it to actually be the ones to talk about it.
yeah,
But yeah, to vaguely answer that question, it's just what we think we know about those sorts of things aren't even remotely close to what the people who actually have lived experience from it. So it's not just, oh, she said a mean thing X amount of years ago, and this is just like playground stuff from like, I remember when I was a teenager and I called someone a bitch. Does that mean I'd be cancelled? It's not like you calling someone a bitch. It's like you physically abusing someone for years with no end for the poor victim. So yeah, I actually have, whatever plan or whatever company that A-Pink are under, like whatever they did to cover up Chorong's scandal, I guess it worked, which is why they delayed it.
yep.
Because it's not really something that's super, I guess, talked about much, or like, did it have a resolution? Did it actually ever happen? I don't know, because occasionally there are cases like Leah from ITZY. She had an accusation, and it did actually manage to eventually come out as not true, but that definitely affected ITZY's momentum, because they were really big with Dalla Dalla. They were pretty big as well with Icy, and then Wannabe still did really good, but then they've kind of like dropped off a bit in terms of how well their stats were doing in Korea, especially on charts. But their new song Sneakers has done quite well with Melon, so I mean, I'm optimistic for them that they've managed to come through the other side of it, because as much as as horrible as bullying is, it's also horrible for someone's bully to then come back years later and then try and make it look like they were the bully the whole time. So yeah, it's fucked. It's fucked.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there you go. What were your highlights and lowlights of the figure skating at the Winter Olympics?
Highlights and lowlights. Ah, bless. It's an interesting thing because with the whole current Russia-Ukraine situation, half the figure skaters there wouldn't be eligible for competition anymore. So mind is absolutely blanked. There's the poor child, Valieva, I'm pretty sure, who had the drugging scandal. Like, if anything, it is the coach who is the issue, not the 15-year-old at the time who's doping. But yeah, so the coach behind Valieva is, what's her name? It's a long story. It's Terry. Yeah, it's Terry. So Terry's like the devil incarnate. Because on one hand, Terry can produce amazing figure skaters. Valieva being one of them. One of my other favorites, Evgenia Medvedeva. Fucking hell, can't say the names. I'm not good at Russian. But yeah, Evgenia is another fantastic figure skater that she's produced. But it's like she produces amazing figure skaters that are basically designed for a couple of years, and then their bodies just completely give out on them because it's not physically safe to be doing the stunts that they do. So there's a she's quad. Sorry, I'm just Googling because like my mind has gone completely. I know her name, Alexandra Trusova. Thank you. Alexandra Trusova has been a figure skater that I've like, been a fan of ever since I kind of heard of her, because she was doing a quad at 13, which is like phenomenal shit. That's the shit that the men do that the women generally do not. Like women typically like if you go back 10 years ago, women were doing doubles. Yeah. Now you have the 13-year-old doing quads. It's phenomenal shit. So yeah, she did. She got silver, and I was, a little disappointed because, like, I hoped for her sake that she'd get a gold, because I think that she's kind of been in a bit of the shadows of other Atari skaters, because she initially, like, she's been a bit back and forth with different coaches. So, Atari kind of doesn't prioritize her, and I'm like, this is one of the most talented kids you will ever see, but she never really got her gold moment. So I feel a bit sorry for her, and like, she was devastated coming off the ice. She was like swearing and saying she'll never skate again, and I think she has. It's a bit hard to do that now anyway with all the war situation going on. So there's that.
Yeah.
Nathan Chen winning gold was basically kind of like a bit anticlimactic, but everyone expected it to happen. Yuzuru Hanyu will always be the greatest of all time. That is what I will say on that. He did the first quad axel in competition. It was like semi-incompleted. I don't care. I'm counting it. Yeah, Yuzuru will always be the greatest of all time, and I will fucking fight the thing on the ice, that little chip on the ice that he stumbled on. Like, I will throw hands with that piece of ice.
Cool.
I will fight the fucking ice.
The impression I get from Korean media, like movies and TV shows, is that Jeju Island is a popular holiday destination.
Yes.
Is this actually the case? From what I've seen of it, it's a small rural shithole with some unimpressive beaches. Are people wanting to get away from life in big cities like Seoul that much?
Yes. Yeah. It's kind of like Rottnest Island, I guess, in that way, for like Perth. Yeah, it's a small little quaint sort of getaway kind of place. Like, Seoul doesn't really have a beach.
So the appeal is that it isn't very spectacular, and so it's a nice change.
That is the appeal, because everything in Korea is very technologically advanced, and like super modern cities, super modern apartments, whereas Jeju is like quaint, homey living.
Yep, gotcha. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Regarding SM's girls supergroup, Girls on Top, should the lack of CSJH, the Grace representation within the group, be considered to be discrimination? I think, what about FX, personally?
Well, I mean, do FX even exist anymore under SM?
No, but they could have asked one of the girls to come back and
I think Crystal would literally rather like saw her arm off than ever have anything to do with SM ever again.
Well, yeah, I saw her on a video with Jessica in it, so I think that she's done a dash with SM, but surely like someone like Luna probably do it. She'll, give her a few bucks, she'll sing anywhere for anyone pretty much, I think. So they could have got Luna into it. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. The song itself is kind of so that's why I guess I'm not that invested into it as much as I should be for, a Dream Girl Group collab. I'm like, yeah, Dream Girl Group collab should actually have a good song.
What are your thoughts on the Squid Game ending, and what are your thoughts on the idea of Netflix creating a Squid Game universe?
Oh, God, how do I say? Squid Game ending, fucking stupid. So, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't watched Squid Game and doesn't know the ending. Basically, the whole point of this guy going through the trauma and, mass murder of multiple hundreds of people was to win money to be able to see his daughter again and prove he's not a deadbeat dad. And then the ending is him getting off the fucking plane that would have taken him to go see his daughter so he could actually be the good father that he was competing in the Squid Games to become, to supposedly go back to the island to, put an end to the evil Squid. So, like, you mean to tell me that this character, who at the very beginning of the show was this drunk gambling addict who was a bum, is now progressed into being this moral, justice figure who's going to take down an entire syndicate from the inside. Like, it's Mission Impossible sort of shit with a bum. And I'm just like, and then the other part they're potentially talking about is like the guy who was secretly running the Squid Games from the inside the whole time. And I'm like, yeah, it was a well done twist, but at the same time, it's hardly the first time that such a trope has ever been done either. So I was just like, well done, well executed, not necessarily original though. As for the Squid Game universe, I think they're potentially talking about what I think is hilarious. The idea of like a Squid Game reality show. So I'm assuming, have you seen Squid Game?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, cool. So you get most of what we're talking about then.
Yeah.
So like, you know, you're making a show about basically that is a social critique of capitalism and hyperconsumism, and then you're
just plugging it into the same capitalist system that you're critiquing.
Yeah, you're basically you're about to make the whole thing the show is criticizing in the first place. I mean, also the other thing is like, bitch, have you ever just fucking watched Survivor? Like, that is what the show is that you're essentially asking them to, like, if you take the murder out of Squid Game, then it basically is Survivor. So it's like, instead of making non-murder Squid Game, watch Survivor. That's always existed and technically existed first. Just a thought.
On Sesame Street, there was an ongoing debate for decades over whether or not Big Bird's friend, the Snuffleupagus, was real. If I recall correctly, Big Bird was the only character who would acknowledge Snuffy's presence. What's your take on this issue? Is Snuffy real or just Big Bird's imaginary friend?
Ah, we got a whole conspiracy theory for Sesame Street.
I never noticed this when I was watching.
I know the character of Snuffleupagus, and it's like, I feel like it's going to be a whole deep dive of like now going onto YouTube and then looking up every single time that Snuffleupagus has appeared on film and then trying to see whether or not any other character has actually directly acknowledged Snuffleupagus, or do they acknowledge that Big Bird thinks he sees a Snuffleupagus? We're asking the real questions here. We're through the looking glass, people.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we'll have to research this topic.
Do your own research.
Call of Duty is an annualized video game franchise. Fans of the series almost without fail shit upon the game, but always seem to buy and play every entry without fail.
Good point.
Usually, Call of Duty is the highest selling game every year outside of annualized sports games like FIFA Soccer and NBA, etc. Viewers of the annual Mnet survival shows are always complaining about evil editing, scripted dialogue, unfair handling of viewer votes, etc. Yet they still watch the shows. Should we conclude that Mnet survivals are the Call of Duty of K-pop?
Pretty much, which is therefore Call of Duty is therefore the American Idol of video games by that logic.
I guess so. What's your favourite idol group that has originated from a survival show?
Oh, is that a question, or is that you just? That's a good question, because I
don't even I can't even answer it because I don't even know. I don't follow the shows. So twice formed from 16, so Twice is definitely probably the most active group that I've followed like long term out of a survival show. Probably the most successful one.
I would say as well. I'm definitely a fan of IZ*ONE as well. Like, I like a lot of their music, and part of the appeal of IZ*ONE to me was also just the fact that I knew that they were disbanding, unlike what Twice was designed to be like a permanent group, whereas IZ*ONE, like, it's interesting because the fans were obviously devastated over the fact that they were disbanding, much like every other produce group like IOI or 101 or whatever. But I'm like, the fact that they're going to disband and you know that the content is limited is honestly part of the appeal, because it really does remove that sort of bullshit lens that other groups kind of have to, I guess, keep up the facade of, like, you know, we're going to be together forever.
Yeah, SM never doing disbandment announcements.
Exactly.
They still haven't suspended CSJH to Grace, you know.
Yeah. So it's basically that, but without all the pretense. So it's just like, that made it a lot easier to just, like, you know, enjoy the content. But as a bit of a fun fact, and again, I'll have a look through my archives and see if I can dig it up for you. But before Twice became Twice, when JYP launched 16, I did a blog post predicting who the final lineup of the group would be. And I had 10 people, like I had 7 members and then 3 wild cards. And so out of 10 people, 9 of them were twice, and then one of them was incorrect because, Minion was the one that I picked as being in the group because she was an original member of Six Mix, which was the pre-planned group that was originally going to debut instead. So still somewhat surprised that she didn't make the group, but I guess, that's why they do the survival shows, is to really test the reaction from the public as well. So
yes. I've heard people describing astrology as space racism. Given that astrology is predicated upon judging people by birth circumstances that they have no control over, would you agree with this aforementioned label?
Gemini hate is now racism. I didn't ask to be born a Gemini, okay? Stop bullying me.
It's eugenics.
And I just fucking know that there's someone listening to this right now going, of course AustralianSana's a fucking Gemini, I knew it.
We have a couple of wrestling questions. Are you sure you didn't put these in?
I swear to God I didn't, but I linked the post that people can submit posts to my wrestling account, and I told people to leave questions. I'm like, give me fucking wrestling questions.
All right, so you got a couple of wrestling questions from your fans. K-pop idols who would make awesome pro wrestlers. Go.
Ooh, that's a good question. Wonho's is the obvious answer.
Yeah, he'd need his own special weight category, wouldn't he?
Yeah, Wonho's buff as fuck. So he would be like the really big monster sort of wrestlers that go in and are buff. In terms of actual wrestling though, Jungkook, like we've seen the Idol Athletics and he just like fucking body slams. He'd suplex the shit out of anyone. And then if you're talking more like character work and selling, which is like, again, K-pop and wrestling are the same thing. Putting on an image and then selling that character, I think Key from SHINee, you know, he wouldn't be a big bulky dude, but he could be a really good like sort of technical wrestler. Like trust me when I say there are skinny guys who are wrestlers. So for character, I would say Key from SHINee as well.
Okay. What K-pop song would you pick to be a world champion wrestler's theme song?
Oh, aespa, Next Level, because I was very much kind of considering using it as my entrance music at one point, but that's also based on the English lyrics of the original demo. I also think that Twice, Icon, banger of an entrance theme song as well would be great.
You've thought about this before?
God, yeah, because I've got to pick my own wrestling music when I do.
Yeah, cool.
I'm working on it.
And here's the last question for the podcast. This is definitely the most important question, so get ready.
All right.
If you had this,
is it a fuck, marry, kill one?
No, it's not. I had none of those this time. They've given up. Yeah, I was grateful too. If you had the superpower of being able to conjure up a scrotum skin without any limits, how would you harness your power for the benefit of society?
Can I, like, conjure it up in my fucking airway to kill myself? What the fuck was that, mate?
Yeah, well, I suppose you probably could. But do you really want to die that way? Do you want choked by scrotum to be on your tombstone?
Well, I would ask for, like, cause of death to be unlisted. Isn't that what happens with suicides anyway?
Yeah.
They don't publicly announce it.
I don't know, probably find some other things to do with a scrotum skin that you could conjure up without any limits. Maybe you could, I don't know. Stop global warming by creating a big shade cloth or something.
I think I'd rather let the world burn, and I think the world would rather let itself burn too.
I don't know. It's too hard. It's too intellectual for me.
Nothing but highbrow content here.
Yeah, had to have it though. Thanks for doing this. The podcast is still going. I assume after that question you still want to be doing these.
We'll see.
No guarantees.
No guarantees after that one, I can tell you that much.
Yeah. So, if you want to hear more answers, ask more questions. If you
ask good questions to the people who were complaining about the shit answers for the love of God, actually send good questions, or else you will once again probably have to deal with us talking about hypothetical scrotums.
Probably will. And yeah, and just remember, Kpopalypse has a Patreon. If you want AustralianSana to be drunk, donate with that in mind. Send me a message.
Yeah, see, I'm once again sober because no one's giving me any fucking money. What? See, this is why we went 6 months without another podcast. Because I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm
I was waiting for the booze money. No one donated any.
exactly
It's pathetic. Anyway,
bums, all of you.
well, K-pop fans are really broke.
Yeah.
It's just one thing I noticed. It's because they're all young. They got no money.
Mm.
By the time they get older and get money, they've moved on from K-pop and they've actually started to listen to actual music. So
Unless you're Australian, Sana.
yeah, well me. um, yeah. Anyway, thanks for doing the cast, and I'll talk to you again. And yeah, we'll see you around on the internet, and we'll find a way to terrorize people in the future. I'm sure.
Excellent. Catch you next
Excellent.
time.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.